G'day ladies and gents, welcome to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome to the end of 2014. It's that time of the year that many YouTubers partake in the very ancient YouTube ritual of the top 10 lists. It's something I've never done before, so this will be my first time. This is my top 10 aircraft of 2014 in War Thunder. Now first, just a couple of things. This is not the 10 best aircraft in War Thunder, this is not the 10 worst aircraft in War Thunder, this is the 10 aircraft that I enjoyed flying the most this year. So this is a very personal list. Second thing, the list is in no particular order. I managed to narrow the planes down, and this was hard enough, narrow it down to 10 aircraft, but trying to put them in an order, 1 through 10, I just couldn't do it. I enjoy them all too much. And the last thing to note is I'm excluding the Boomerang from the top 10 because it would automatically get a spot every single time in any list that I did like this. So I'm removing it as an option in the top 10 list. So let's go on to number 10. So first up, the plane we all knew that was going to make the top 10. This was actually the last time this plane made it on my channel. It was the time that actually spawned the idea of doing this top 10 list. This is the Typhoon 1B Late. This plane is amazing, incredibly fast, one of the fastest planes in its battle rating. It is an insanely quick diver, extremely high acceleration, extremely high top end speed. It climbs well. It's surprisingly maneuverable, all things considered, and it's armed with 4 20mm Hispano cannons with a crap ton of ammunition. It is just a beast of a plane to fly. If you haven't spent a lot of time with your Typhoon 1B Late yet, or you haven't unlocked it yet, I fully encourage you to go and round this thing up. It will not disappoint you. It is just a great machine. Taking up the number 9 slot is the Ki-61 Otsu. 450 caliber machine guns, extremely maneuverable, quite fast for its battle rating. When the Japanese built this plane, they basically took the design of the MC-202, took away all the things that they didn't like and replaced it with more awesome. It is just an incredible aircraft and one of my favourite Japanese planes of all time. What surprises me the most about the Ki-61 is how many pilots that face it that will entirely ignore the aircraft, favouring going after Zeros. Now, Zeros are incredible aircraft, but they do require a fairly skilled pilot in order to be able to make them perform. And once they're out of cannon ammunition, without extremely good pilots with extremely good aim, those 7.7mm machine guns on the Zero can be very hard to make kills with. This thing's got 450 calibers and a load of ammunition. It will rip your plane to pieces, yet the amount of times I see F6Fs just turn their back on the Ki-61, it's mind-boggling. This is easily one of the most enjoyable aircraft in the Japanese line to play, and I thoroughly recommend this plane for a good time. In the number 8 slot, a plane that you've seen me fly out with Squire before and kick the crap out of machines so much more advanced than it. This is the BF-109 F2 with the 15mm MG-151. I love this plane for 109. It has the perfect mix of speed, maneuverability and firepower to be very efficient. All the guns being mounted on the nose makes it extremely accurate. It's just a lethal little machine. It can be an incredibly hard machine to use. I can understand why there are a lot of pilots out there that don't like it. But me, there's very few times that I've ever bought this plane out and not had a great time. The number 7 slot was an interesting pick, but it's a plane that I still enjoy despite all of its problems, and it has many. The flight model is balked. It suffers compressibility issues in high-speed dives on a level that the real plane never actually experienced. Anywhere over 550 kilometers an hour on more than a 45-degree dive, and you'll have trouble pulling out of a dive, even if you have 5,000 feet of altitude below you. its flight model is bad. Add to that the battle rating of the plane with the constant lowering of BRs on planes around it. It's a plane that's being crushed by machines that are 4 to 5 years newer than it, that it simply cannot compete with. And yet, I still love the aircraft. I still enjoy flying it out, even when I'm getting shot down in it, which does happen regularly now that it's basically been destroyed by Gaijin. It's just that beautiful an aircraft. Australia used a lot of these things. I've seen a lot of these things fly for real, and it's its design, the way it looks. It's a plane that I can't help but enjoy flying, even though it's bad. And speaking of planes that are bad, the number 6 slot is taken out by the Lancaster B Mark III. This is the second Lancaster in the British line, and this is another plane that performs incredibly poorly in War Thunder at the moment, and yet I really enjoy flying the machine. The Lancasters have always been my preference for heavy bombers. Now, I'm not much of a heavy bomber pilot, but if I had to fly any one, this would be the machine that I bring out. It has an inferior armament to the B-17s. It's slower. It's less manoeuvrable now with the recent flight model upgrades, and yet it's just a plane that, despite all its shortcomings, I enjoy using more than any other heavy bomber in War Thunder. Its payload is one area that it cannot be faulted. This plane isn't even fully upgraded for me at the moment, and it already has a payload large enough that it can destroy all 3 mini bases on a map and still have bombs left over to start working over the main runway. Its payload is phenomenal, and it still has payloads left that are even bigger. I am looking forward to the day when Gaijin finally gets around to putting the damn tall boy into this goddamn thing. That will be amazing. A bomb that is actually powerful enough that it should be able to one-shot a base, as in the main runway. It'll be game-breaking, but it'll be historically accurate. And to the number 5 slot goes the MiG-15 Biz. Gaijin added so many new jets to the game this year. The amount is mind-boggling. 2 to 3 times the amount of aircraft in Era 5 than there were at the start of 2014. And yet, the one that takes my number 5 slot and the only jet on my list is one of the oldest jets in War Thunder. The MiG-15 Biz is just a plane that I can't help but enjoy flying. It's fast, it has an incredible climb rate, it's manoeuvrable, it's a great dogfighting aircraft. The sound of the guns, why you do require vertical targeting, and I tend to run a shorter convergence because the guns are a little bit more inaccurate due to the varying calibers. Pulling the trigger on this thing and hearing the jackhammer cannons firing off and watching one hit destroy an enemy aircraft is, well, it's one of the most enjoyable things you'll do in Era 5. If you are grinding out any aircraft in War Thunder for Era 5, I would suggest going for the MiG-15 Biz. It's a plane that I don't think anybody can not enjoy this once they get the handle of it. It is just, it's a great machine. So the number 4 slot goes to what I'm pretty sure was the first premium aircraft I ever bought in War Thunder. The Focke-Wulf 190 D13, and this is a great plane. I would say it is probably the first of the super props, or the oldest of the super props available in War Thunder. This is one of the most powerful propeller-driven or piston-driven aircraft ever created. It is an exceptional machine. MG-151 armed, incredibly fast, extremely manoeuvrable for considering the role that it was designed for. A roll rate that allows angle of attack changes and direction changes at a speed that very few aircraft can compete with. This is a prop that, as you can see, it hunts down and destroys jets and does it very, very, very well. It's a great looking aircraft as well, and a joy of a machine to fly. This plane has been responsible for unlocking pretty much most of the German air tree over the years that I've owned it. The only thing I've ever been curious about the aircraft is why this and not the D12 is the premium. The interesting part is the D13 is actually the production model of this particular model of Focke-Wulf 190. The D12 we have in the tech tree is actually the prototype for the D13's production run, so it's strange. I'm not sure why Gaijin put it in this way. Doesn't really matter though. Exceptional aircraft, exceptionally great fun to fly, exceptionally dangerous. Do not underestimate this plane if you encounter it. And it was inevitable that a naval cat was going to show up on this list at some point in time, and this is the one that I chose. This is probably the plane that I've had the most fun flying in 2014 in regards to the American naval line. This is the F-8F-1 Bearcat. This is the MG equipped version, that is Squire Flyer booming through at the moment. And this is a plane that again is easily defined as one of the super props, as one of the most powerful piston driven aircraft ever created. This particular breed, when the Grumman Corporation designed the F-8F Bearcat, when they started the designs, the war with Japan in the Pacific hadn't quite ended yet. The actual designs for this aircraft, they took everything that they learnt from German technology that they encountered in the European theatre. They took everything that the British had developed over the course of the Typhoons, the Tempest, and of course the Spitfire series. Everything the Americans had learned in regards to their land and naval-based fighters, and they combined all that knowledge together to create this machine. It's fast, it's manoeuvrable, it dives well, it climbs well, it has incredibly heavy armaments. The 450 caliber machine guns this plane is equipped with will rip things to pieces, and the later variants equipped with cannons as well. This is just a beast of a plane that was designed to dogfight against the best that Japan ever had. Unfortunately, it was a little slow on its production run, and by the time Grumman got these things in the air, the war was over. But the magic of War Thunder's matchmaking means we can now actually take these machines out and see what could have been, and well, the Bearcat is an incredible, incredible machine. Taking out the number 2 slot is the P-38G, or the XP-38G, if you have access to the premium. So, the P-38, oh, where to begin? It is absolutely gorgeous, it's fast, it's surprisingly manoeuvrable for a twin-engine fighter. It's easily one of the most fun machines to fly in War Thunder. But this wasn't always the case. When I first started playing this game and got access to the XP-38, which you see here, its flight model was atrocious. This was a machine that was tiered, well, it would have been considered high error 3, low error 4, and had a flight model that was less capable than the one that we see in game now. It was a horrible, horrible machine, which really pissed me off because this was a plane that historically was amazing and I personally loved. Thankfully, part of the way through this year, Gaijin finally got around to fixing the bloody thing. While it is the G variant, so it is not the definitive version of the P-38, we have been promised that the XP-38G will be replaced with the K variant at some stage in the future, which I'm really looking forward to. That said, the G variant that we have in game is, well, it really is one of my favourite aircraft. This probably would have taken the number 2 slot if these aircraft were in order after all. I love this plane. It's nearly impossible for me to fly this plane out and not have a good time. I actually try not to fly it too often because I don't want to spoil it for myself. It's stunningly beautiful, it's manoeuvrable, it's fast, it climbs well, it dives well, and all that ammo, all that weaponry mounted in the nose, it is just a lethal machine. You get in front of this plane, and it's going to kill you. And finally, down to the number 1 slot. And again, if this list was in an order from 10 to 1, with number 1 being my favourite aircraft of War Thunder, this plane wouldn't have changed position. This is the A6M2 Mod 11. The Mod 11 is the A6M0 that most pilots actually skip over to get access to the A6M3s and move further down the line, and honestly, you don't know what you're missing out on. What's different between this and the standard A6M2? Well, first things first, this plane is not naval-based. This is a land-based variant of the Zero, which with that comes a couple of things. First things first, it doesn't have any tail hook or any of the arrestor gear mounted in the tail in order to be able to perform carrier landings. You most certainly can still land it on a carrier, but you'll have to do it without the assistance of the tail hook. What this means is there's a couple of 100 kilos of weight that is normally mounted in the tail in the terms of bracings and structural supports in order to be able to pull a Zero to a stop on a guide rope or a catch rope that is not in the tail of this aircraft. This makes it lighter and far more nimble than the standard A6M. What's even more interesting about this plane is because it is carrier-based, or not carrier-based rather, it is a land-based aircraft that basically only flies on maps where Japan starts with carriers. This thing always gets an air spawn. It spawns in at about 2,000 to 3,000 feet every time you bring it out. Besides that, it's pretty much an A6M2 in every way, but that little bit of extra weight being gone, increasing its maneuverability, and the fact that it starts with an air spawn means getting this plane into a position in combat is incredibly easy. Its armaments are exactly the same as the standard A6M2, but due to its added maneuverability, it is so much easier to get these guns into position on this plane. If you have skipped over this aircraft to move down the Japanese line into more advanced planes, I would strongly suggest going back, unlocking this plane and spending a bit of time to get it spaded. It's entirely worth it. This is easily one of the most enjoyable aircraft that I fly in War Thunder. Again, it's a plane that I try not to fly too often because I don't want to spoil myself with it. You can just dodge out of the way of anything that can potentially get guns on you. If anything is dumb enough to get close, you'll rip it to pieces with those 20mm cannons. The 7.7s at this battle rating are actually not bad guns if you can aim them on. You'll rip apart control surfaces very easily with the smaller caliber weapons. And you get a couple of thousand rounds of 7.7 ammunition in this plane. With only 2 guns, this actually gives the Zero a surprisingly large amount of endurance, so it can really stick it in the fight. As I said before, if you haven't unlocked this plane yet, unlock it. You won't regret it. So ladies and gents, that is my top 10 favourite aircraft in War Thunder in no particular order, except maybe 1 and 2. I reckon that would probably still be, the P-38 and the Zero would be still in 1 and 2 slots, exactly as they are if I did order these planes in the first place. And that is also the last video of 2014 for me. This has been my first full solid year of doing the YouTube thing ever. And it has been great fun. You guys have been awesome. I've loved making the videos for you. I've loved talking to you in the comments, flying with you in battles. I've had an absolutely great time, and I'm looking forward to 2015 being an even better year again. So, it's time to call it and for me to go to my New Year's party. Whichever way you're choosing to celebrate the changeover of the year, please enjoy yourselves, and until next year, fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.